Good evening, friends, and welcome to this week's edition of the Hamilton Report. I'm Scott J. Hamilton, Executive Director of the Oklahoma Democratic Party, and I'm very, very happy that you decided to spend half an hour with us this evening. I promise you that with our guest tonight, it will be half an hour very well spent. Before I introduce him, though, a couple of things I want to share with you. One is Oklahoma still does not have a mask mandate. We are not giving up on reaching out to the governor. If you have not yet done so, please call his office, email his office, write his office, because sadly our numbers are growing horribly every single day. This goes way beyond personal responsibility now. We are talking about lives that are unnecessarily being taken from us, and this is the worst thing that can happen to any family this time of the year. So in addition to taking care of yourself and your family, please reach out to the governor, because we have to have some leadership, even if it's from a Republican in office right now. We must have it. Speaking of leadership or lack thereof, the Oklahoma Democratic Party just this morning filed a Freedom of Information Act request with the Attorney General's office. There you can see it. Because we want to know exactly how much money was wasted in this frivolous lawsuit that he joined with an indicted attorney general from Texas. We knew, all of us knew, this was going nowhere, and yet Oklahoma funds were sent to this folly, and it's very disconcerting to me when we have men and women and children who right this minute are sitting at a kitchen table and they don't have enough to eat. We've got to do better, Oklahoma. And sadly, I'm tired of even saying that. We have got to do better today, because we cannot keep going like we're going. Already people around the country are looking at us and just shaking their heads. And that's a real shame, because we can do better. So I'm going to back off a little bit. I apologize if I started too strong tonight, but I'm so convicted of the fact that we need to do better. And now one thing that gives me a lot of hope in moving forward that we are all going to be doing better is the Electoral College today confirms also what we knew, and that is that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will be the next president and vice president of the United States. So despite all of the clown cars riding around the nation, we now have truth that it has prevailed, and thank God for President-elect Biden. I know we are on to a better future come the middle of January. Okay, that's my soapbox time for tonight. I'm going to climb off of that now and welcome to our program a man who I can't tell you how much I admire. I have been very fortunate, and those of you who are watching and have been watching this broadcast since we began on August 1st, I think also have been fortunate because we have been blessed to have some incredibly talented people, people at the top of their game, talking about criminal justice reform, community policing, talking about what it means to be a mayor of a small town and a council person of a big city. We have covered a lot of territory, and I'm grateful for all of our guests. But I'm particularly grateful for our guest this evening. He has done so much for not just the Democratic Party, but truly the call and cause of democracy in our nation. It's my privilege to welcome the chair of the ASDC, which is the Association of State Democratic Committees, who is with us this evening, joining us from his home in Minnesota. It's my privilege to welcome to the Hamilton Report, Ken Martin. Ken, good evening and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Scott. It's a pleasure to be here. Although it's, I'm sure, a lot colder up here. It's 15 degrees here in Minnesota tonight. I'm sure it's a lot warmer down there, but it's going to be a great show. Thanks for having me on tonight.
We had about 5 inches of snow yesterday, and a couple more predicted for tomorrow. Right now, it's 32 degrees. In Oklahoma City, we call that winter. And for you folks in Minnesota, I think that's the 4th of July.
I was going to say, that's balmy for us. That's short weather. We liked it about 30, 40 degrees. That's great for us. So.
Well, I'm awfully glad that you could be here tonight. And when you agreed to join us, I have to share with our audience that I did not tell Ken that we were subtitling tonight's Hamilton report with a glimpse into the crystal ball as to next year. And so, thankfully, Ken agreed to join us tonight before I told him that we were going to be using his crystal ball and taking a look at where we're going. Before we do that, though, I want to think back a little bit. This has been an extraordinary year for everybody in this country and around the world because of COVID and the way that we've treated it or not treated it. But that being said, we've learned a lot this year. We learned how to campaign without knocking doors. We learned how to cross state lines and work together. But we also had some big challenges this year, Ken, and this is a good time, I think, to reflect on those. One of the challenges that we faced as a state party here in Oklahoma, and listening and talking with my colleagues around the country, it seems that people were similarly struck by the same challenge, and that was one of messaging during this very prolonged election season. We tried to stay in our lane and focus on issues. And in retrospect, I wonder if maybe we would not have gained more territory had we taken a more head-on approach with some of the negativity. I'd like for you to think out loud a little bit about that. Would we, looking back, do it the same way, or do you think we've learned enough that we could make some adjustments in our messaging?
Well, look, first off, there's always room for improvement. And of course, after every single election, it all seems so easy. If we had only known that at the time, right? But let me just start with the positive, which is to say today we are celebrating the fact that over 300 electors around the country have restored sanity and decency to our democracy. This was truly a historic election, and we should be proud of that fact. Of course, we have been working so hard around the country in each of our states these last 4 years for this moment to end this long national nightmare and actually put our country back on track. And that's what's happened today with these votes that have been cast. And, while we're celebrating that, of course, Donald Trump and the Republicans continue to try to throw everything they can to actually steal this election. And we're not going to allow that to happen. And today's a great day. Of course, in every election, what I find problematic, frankly, is in elections when you win, people tend to brush the mistakes that were made under the rug as if there were no mistakes. And when you win, people think you should throw everything out, including all the successes. And neither one of those are true. Every single election, there's things we can learn to do better. Every single election, there's things we did well that we should build upon. And let me say, there are some challenging signs on the horizon for us as a Democratic Party. One is we continue to do well, which is a good thing, with highly educated voters. But that means we're not doing as well with those people with less education. And as you think about the roots of our party, we were the champion for all people. And we're now becoming the party of, and it's been sort of cliche since the election, of density and diplomas, meaning we're doing well in the more dense parts of our states, the big cities and the suburbs, and less well in the rural parts of our state. And I know in Oklahoma, like Minnesota, we have a lot of rural parts of our state that are just as important as the big cities, and we need to figure that out. We need to figure out how we do better there. But we also need to figure out how we do better with working class people throughout our states and throughout our country. And so clearly messaging is part of that. And I think part of the key to messaging moving forward is we have to be seen as a party, as a champion of all people, regardless of whether you live in a rural area, a suburban area, an inner city, regardless of your background, your demographic profile, your socioeconomic profile, your educational attainment. We need to be seen as your champion. And I'll just use an example here in Minnesota. In 2012, I had the great pleasure of being one of the founding board members for Minnesotans United for All Families, which was a campaign to beat back a constitutional amendment trying to define marriage between a man and a woman. We were successful, thank God, in that effort. But during that campaign, I sat down with the former Democratic governor and I asked him, Governor Anderson was his name. I said, how do you think gay marriage is going to play in the rural parts of our state? And he gave me an answer which really shocked and surprised me, to be honest with you. He said, let me tell you something, Ken. People in greater Minnesota, which is what we call the rural parts of our state, people in greater Minnesota are good people. They don't mind if you stand up and fight for the poor, if you stand up and fight for immigrants, if you stand up and fight for the Twin Cities, as long as you're standing up and fighting for them. If they feel like you forgot them, they're going to leave you. And that has always stuck with me because I think about my father-in-law, who's a farmer in southern Minnesota, 800 acres of corn and beans and beef cattle. I think about my brother, who's a union carpenter. Both of them voted for Trump, by the way. And the reality is they don't see our party. They don't see the Democratic Party standing up and being their champion anymore. And so I think we've got a great opportunity. In every crisis, there's an opportunity, right, Scott? We've got an opportunity to win those voters back. And despite some of the pundits in our party who believe it's time to give up on rural parts of our country or rural parts of our state, or to give up on working class people, I think that's the wrong answer. The right answer is to stand up and be everyone's champion. And when we do that, I think we can win them back and we can start to win these states again.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, Ken. I was talking with someone over the weekend, and we were talking about rural hospitals that have closed in Oklahoma and certainly other places. But when Oklahoma, when our leadership refused to expand Medicaid coverage, it caused some big issues, particularly in rural communities. And the one thing that, as I was talking with this woman, that became very clear, and that is, if a hospital closes in your community, it closes for Democrats and Republicans and independents. It closes for everyone. And so by looking at the issues that are important, as you just said, there's a great opportunity, I think, for us to listen and then to speak. And I'm excited because we here in Oklahoma are putting together now the foundation of a listening tour. We had planned to do this last March and April before the virus hit. But it's important that we don't go and tell everyone what we want to do for them until we understand what they want done. And so I really like your approach. And I think you're right. We have an opportunity, a great opportunity to show that we are committed. Let me ask you, would you describe a little bit about your party? Minnesota is unique. Your party is the Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party. And in Oklahoma, we are the Oklahoma Democratic Party. So tell me about how your party came about. And I should mention to our audience that you are the longest serving chair in the party's history. So you're chair of your party, you are chair of ASDC, and you are co-chair of the DNC. Now, I don't know how your family even knows what you look like anymore, but tell me a little bit about your party.
Well, let me just say, everywhere I go, people say, what the heck is a DFL? And I will tell you what the DFL is. As you mentioned, it's the Democratic Farmer Labor Party. The party was started in 1944 by then mayor of Minneapolis, who helped lead this historic merger, Hubert Humphrey, who I'm sure you have heard of and many have heard of, former vice president and our presidential nominee in 1968 against Richard Nixon. Hubert Humphrey recognized in Minnesota, before the merger of the DFL, we had three parties: the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, and the Farmer Labor Party. In fact, at that time, the Democratic Party was really the lesser of the three. The Republican Party and the Farmer Labor Party were the two major parties in this state. And but because the Farmer Labor Party and the Democrats would split votes amongst left-leaning voters, amongst Democratic voters, we could never win statewide races. And of course, Hubert Humphrey had a little bit of self-interest because he was thinking about running for the U.S. Senate in 1948, which he did, and he won. But he knew that in order to win a statewide race, a Senate race, he needed to make sure that we weren't splitting the votes. And he actually, along with Orville Freeman and a number of other big heavyweights here in Minnesota, were able to bring together this historic merger of I would argue, one of the strongest third parties that we've ever seen in this country's history. They were very successful here in Minnesota before the merger. And so you have the Democratic Party, which formed with the Farmer Labor Party. party in 1944, thanks to Hubert Humphrey. And of course, it's unique. And we really celebrate the origins of our party and the roots of our party. The farmer and the labor part of our party really matter. And as long as I'm chair of the DFL, we're going to continue to celebrate and live our values around not only being Democrats, but also in this state being Democratic Farmer Labor Party.
Again, I'm just listening and absorbing some of what you're saying, because this is applicable to places all over the country. One of our viewers just commented that greater Minnesota, greater Oklahoma, and it's true. I mean, if we take our biggest cities out of the state, or put them on one side and our rural communities on the other, there's no. The difference is that there are so many more folks who live in rural Oklahoma. So I'm glad that you said that. I'm relatively new in the party in terms of working for the party. Been a Democrat for most all of my life. But one of the things that I have found so incredibly rewarding this year is working across state lines with colleagues in other places, not just to raise money, but to bounce ideas, to share thoughts, to get my hand spanked when I needed that. And so tell me a little bit about what your hopes are moving forward, and how we can continue that, but even grow the working relationships between states.
Well, first off, I'm incredibly proud of the ASDC, which is the Association of State Democratic Committees, because it's an association which really allows all of us to learn from each other, learn the best practices, learn how to be better state party chairs, vice chairs, and executive directors. You know, I have a plaque in my office that says none of us are as smart as all of us, and that's how I lead my party here in Minnesota. But I think that's something, the ethos in which the ASDC really operates, which is no one state party has all the answers, but collectively we can learn from each other, both from our successes and our mistakes. We can be there to support one another, and frankly, we can be there to exchange best practices so all of us can continue to put our best foot forward. And I've been really excited about the ASDC's work these last 4 years. You're absolutely right, Scott. I mean, it is a great organization to be able to learn from, and particularly for folks coming in who are new, it's a great place for them to turn to get new ideas, to learn from others. But frankly, you know, it doesn't matter how long you've served in the party. One of the things that bothers me about Democratic politics is the people who say, well, this person hasn't served long enough in the party to run for this position or to have a say. And frankly, some of the best ideas we have are from people who are coming into the party, who are new, filled with a lot of energy, and frankly, a lot of new ideas and perspectives on how we can organize. And so, you know, look, while I appreciate the work that all of us are doing, we need to continue to reach outside of our comfort zones and listen. I think what you said earlier is the critical piece of our party moving forward. Open our ears and listen more than we speak. If we listen to the people, they will give us the answers on how we should move forward, both in terms of what the message should be and how we can organize and build our coalition.
Before we leave this, I would be remiss if I did not say this on our broadcast. I will send you a note, which has been my plan all along, but I need to say this publicly. Lauren Harmon Murphy, who is the Midwest director for ASDC, I cannot sing her praises enough. I mean, just a brilliant thinker, and as important, a super person, and really great to work with. So I just need to get that out there, that a lot of what we do, I would hate to think about trying to do it without her and Maureen Guard and the other great folks who work for the ASDC. So you have done very well in leading them. I promise you that, Ken.
Well, I can't take credit for any of their work. I'm so grateful to be able to serve alongside all of them in the work that they do. And I feel really blessed. Of course, I'm biased, but my belief is that the best part of the DNC is the ASDC. These are staff that are committed completely to not only your success in Oklahoma, but to mine in Minnesota and everywhere else in this country. And they work tirelessly on behalf of our values and on behalf of state parties. So I feel immensely blessed to be able to work with them.
Let's take what we've been talking about and apply that to the next few months. What kinds of things do you see happening? And I know that everyone is tired right now, but I have a feeling that we will all be energized after the first of the year and certainly moving toward the inauguration. What do you see happening in the near term future, say the first quarter of 2021?
Well, obviously, there's a lot of excitement around the inauguration and, of course, the first 100 days of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's administration. And we have a lot to look forward to, frankly, in terms of their leadership and what we'll see out of that first 100 days. Of course, so much is going to hinge, frankly, on what happens in those 2 Senate races in Georgia here on January 5th. Of course, if we're successful there, then we have the trifecta in the federal government. It allows President-elect and Vice President-elect to actually move forward with their agenda on behalf of the American people without any obstinance or intransigence from the Republican Senate. Of course, we know the stakes of this election. It's not just about giving Biden and Harris a majority in the Senate. It's really about giving all of us the ability to actually move legislation forward, which we have seen, unfortunately, the Senate is a place where good legislation goes to die over the last several years. We need to change that dynamic in Washington so we can start helping to improve people's lives again. But let me tell you, when I think about 2021, and frankly, any off year, and I hate to even call it an off year because I think there is no such thing as an off year, right? And in fact, in Minnesota, we have a plan which is called Turn on the Off Year. How do we actually turn it on? How do we, every year I hear people say, well, we're going to take some time off because it's not an election year. Well, let me tell you what, we've got 3 commodities in politics, right? It's people, it's money, and it's time. All 3 of them are important. Right? We can always go out and raise a few more bucks. We can always go out and recruit a few more people. But the one thing we can't do, Scott, is get more time back. And when you think about that, each day that we let go by without us organizing, without us going out and talking to voters and getting them engaged in our process is one less day we have to do that work. And so we need to turn on the off year. We need to use the time we have in 2021, whether you have elections on the ballot or not, and most of us do, by the way. We need to use that time to actually organize and to put plans on paper and get out there and start communicating with voters. Too often I see parties and candidates and campaigns waiting until the final 4 or 5 months before an election to actually engage people in the conversation. And because of that, the conversation becomes very transactional. We don't have enough time to talk to these voters more than once or twice right before the election, meaning that the conversation we have with them usually is asking them for something. And usually it's their vote. Will you vote for our candidates? That transactional nature of politics, we need to put aside. We can't keep going to these communities 4 or 5 months before an election and asking them for their vote. We need to start much earlier and develop a relationship with voters around our shared values. And that means we need to have a continued dialogue and conversation with these voters, not asking them for something, but really listening to their concerns, listening to their hopes and dreams and aspirations, and then talking to them about how their values are our values. And when the time comes, Scott, when the time comes to ask them for their vote, we've already had a conversation with them about their hopes and dreams. That's the way forward. And we need to use all the time we have in 2021 to move to a relational organizing model, not a transactional organizing model.
You are so right. And something you said also makes me aware of the fact that when we start earlier, not only are our candidates meeting with potential voters, that's also a tremendous way for the party to identify new candidates. That's something that we've been talking a lot about here. Oklahoma City, for example, our city council is nonpartisan, but we've got some amazing Democrats who are running for seats. These are people who have never run for office before. You have worked with Alicia Andrews, our chair, for some time.
She's amazing. You are so lucky to be able to work with her, Scott.
I am, and I can't argue that at all. But she says something frequently, and I think that it's starting to resonate with folks, and that is the people that you elect in your local community, to your school board, to your city council, as your mayor, whatever is the closest to you. These are the same people who run over the same potholes that you do. These are the same people who experience frustration with the power company because your neighborhood is underserved, or whatever the issue might be. They are not removed from it. They're a part of the community. And so I think that what you said is so important, that we can't take time off. We have a number of municipal elections here in Oklahoma coming up, and these are as critical, and in some ways more critical, than anything else that people can vote for. And so we have a responsibility of making sure that people understand that and get the vote out. So you've raised some really strong points this evening, and beyond what we see, that we're all kind of starting to gather a common sense of view about. What do you personally take away all the hats that you wear? Just think of yourself as Ken Martin, the husband, the dad. What are your hopes for 2021? What, if you could just look from now through a whole 12 months, what would you like to be talking about that has happened in a positive fashion a year from now?
Yeah, I mean, if we're having this conversation next year, the conversation I want to have is how Joe Biden and Kamala Harris led us out of this pandemic and helped people find jobs and get back on their feet. We have a lot of people who are suffering right now, not just because of COVID, but as a result of the economic collapse. I want to see our businesses back open and small businesses thriving again. I want to see people throughout this country able to gather again in person and celebrate life as we used to know it, right? Knowing that, hopefully after this year, with all that success, we've also learned some things about ourselves in terms of our strengths and weaknesses as a country. And if anything, that is a silver lining, if there is a silver lining in what we've gone through this year, is that it's really laid bare the inequities that exist in our society, right? The fact that these disparities are great. Of course, COVID is hitting all communities very hard, but it's particularly hitting communities of color really hard. When we look at unemployment and as a result of the economic collapse, it's hitting all communities hard, but it's particularly hitting communities of color hard, right? And so we know through everything we've gone through this year that we have seen the disparities, unfortunately, that really exist in our communities in really disturbing ways. Not that we didn't notice those before, but hopefully now people's eyes are even more wide, and people are more aware of what's happening in our communities, and that by next year, we have a plan to really deal with this moving forward. Look, again, in every crisis, there's an opportunity, and our opportunity here as we come out of this is, as Joe Biden said, to build back better. And build back better means we're building an economy that works for all people, and we're building a healthcare system that works for all people. I'm excited about the opportunity. I'm nervous about the coming days ahead as we head into the new year. To be honest with you, but I am resolved in the strength of the American people, who have sent a very clear message that they want to turn the page and that our brightest days are ahead of us. So I'm really looking forward to it. We got a lot of elections and politics and other things to do, of course, next year. But when I look at what the story I want to tell next year, it's about the resolve of the American people who bounced back even stronger than before this pandemic.
I agree with everything you just said. And I do have one personal wish for the year to come. You and I have spent literally countless hours on Zoom together this year. There's no way I could estimate how many hours. But one of the wishes that I have, and it's something that I'm counting on coming true this year, is to be able to get together in person, to shake your hand and give you a hug, because
yes,
you just are one hell of a leader, and I appreciate all that you do for all of us in the party and outside the party, because ultimately everything that we do in politics affects everyone in our community and in our country. And so for your contributions, I need to say a very heartfelt thank you. We have just scratched the surface, so I'm going to ask that if you will pencil me in for mid-year to come back and we'll do a check-in to see how accurate your crystal ball was. I happen to think that it's that you polished it well, and it looks like we're off to something good. So, Ken, do come back to see us. In the meantime, wish you and your family a wonderful holiday season. All of our friends in Minnesota, 2021 that we can celebrate every day. Thank you for joining us on the Hamilton Report tonight, Ken.
Thank you, Scott, and to your wonderful chairwoman, Alicia, and to you. Happy holidays to everyone in Oklahoma. I so enjoy our partnership, and I can't wait to see you in person as well, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. You know, one of the things that Ken said, and while it's certainly true in politics, like when he said it, it struck me. He said, we can't get back time. And at this time of the year, when we are all facing yet another holiday that's a first for all of us, something new and challenging and different, and in some ways quite sad because we can't get together, we can't hug each other, but we also need not waste any time because that's time we can't get back. And instead, I'm going to encourage you, even as I encourage myself, to stay positive, to look forward to a new year that will just be better than this year. Next week on the Hamilton Report, we will be talking about an issue that's very important and one I feel very strongly about, and that is mental health during the holidays, how we can take care of ourselves, but also some things to watch out for the people that we love and care for, so that we can be an active member of supporting someone else's mental health. Before we go, I want to say one more time, thank you so much to Ken Martin, chair of ASDC and the vice chair of the DNC. What a great man, and I'm so happy that he could be with us. And I'm so happy that you could be with us. Please join us again next Monday evening at 7 o'clock. As always, you can go back and see any of our previous shows on our Facebook page or at okdemocrats.org/YouTube. Until then, take good care of yourself, take good care of each other, and know I appreciate you very, very much. On behalf of all of us here at the Oklahoma Democratic Party, I'm Scott J. Hamilton, thanking you for being with us. Good night, everyone.